The Biden administration's eventual decision, and we've been waiting for it for days, to provide medium-range rocket systems is both symbolically important, militarily important. Symbolically, at a time of the Russian offensive in eastern Ukraine, trying to seize more territory, it says to Kyiv, you haven't been abandoned. And militarily, those weapons will make a difference in eastern Ukraine, especially if the Russians decide to go even farther in the Donbass. At the same time, what the U.S. has done is drawn a line for now on saying how far they go as part of the coalition confronting Russia, and that is they're not providing the longer range missile systems that have a range of about 300 kilometers as opposed to 80, because they don't want the Ukrainian military to carry out attacks inside Russia. So I think it's taken time, but it is an important decision, especially if you put it in the wider context of military aid from a number of countries. For example, this morning, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has finally committed to providing an advanced air defense system to Kyiv.
Yeah, and this has been critical because even though we've seen the Ukrainians withstanding a lot of the war effort by Russia, Russia is starting to get the gains that it wanted, particularly in the eastern part of the country.
They're getting the gains in part of the east, specifically in what's called the Luhansk Oblast province. And you'll hear a lot, I think, in recent days about this city called Severodonetsk. Has about 100,000 people before the war. The Russians have leveled it, an absolute flattening, where now they're going to try to overrun it, as they did with Mariupol in the south. Now, that could be a short-term gain for the Russians, but on the wider front in the east, the Russians face a number of challenges. They have not made significant gains throughout the area, and they're facing a Ukrainian counterattack up in the northeast, near Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv. So I think it's a case of, as you know, battle and war. Russia may win this battle at high cost to everyone, but what we're looking at is a war which is going to be protracted for months, which is why the military aid is important.
Yeah.
Which is, all right, Russia makes an immediate gain, but in the longer term, it's Kyiv that will have the advantage.
Yes, and the Ukrainian president has been urging all the allies for more support and really asking for these longer range rocket systems. How effective could they be now in that eastern province area?
Well, to give you a comparison, the longest range artillery that the Ukrainians currently have are U.S. supplied howitzers, which have a range of about 40 kilometers, about 25 miles. Now, the medium range rockets being supplied have double that range once they're deployed on the battlefield. I don't think it'll be enough to save Severodonetsk. I think that city will probably be overrun this week, but I think it will be able to hold other parts of the east. And as we saw in the north, it's one thing for the Russians to gain territory, as they did in the first few weeks in the invasion, but to hold territory is a far different matter. And then to take it just a bit wider, remember, this military assistance comes 24 hours after the European Union has passed an additional sanctions package against the Russians and has provided 9 billion euros in aid to Ukraine. Now, those sanctions, which significantly will reduce Russian oil imports, just gradually tighten the squeeze. And it puts the question to Vladimir Putin, all right, you've gained a bit of territory in the east. Do you stop now and negotiate? Or do you really want to take this further?
Yeah. And do you see that partial oil ban that was announced as tightening the screws sufficiently to bring him to the table, because he's shown no appetite for that so far?
No, I don't think Vladimir Putin comes to the table, because I think there is the practical issues that we can discuss, which is the economic effects, where Russia is facing an erosion of its position for its citizens. We can talk about the military situation, but beyond practical is just simply the mindset of Putin. And if he is dedicated to trying to humiliate Ukraine, to occupy much of the country, and to bring down the Zelensky government, not only does he try to seize the territory in the east, he tries to find some way of getting the space to go back and attack the north again. But there's nothing you can do to drag him to the negotiating table. So in the meantime, you simply have to draw a line against how far he can advance inside the country.
Yeah, and he's trying to mitigate some of those economic pressures with opening the trade up through Mariupol.
Yeah, what they're doing is, the Ukrainians call it looting. All I'll say is the facts. That is, we've had the first shipment of steel, which has been moved out of Mariupol from that Ukrainian port city to the Russian city of Rostov. We've got other looting or taking of supplies from the south, notably grain and wheat, which is being taken through Sevastopol and Crimea over to Russia, because the Russian economy needs to be propped up, and Ukraine, or at least the occupied part of Ukraine, serves as a vassal state for that. But the problem for Putin is that he started off this invasion thinking more than 3 months ago, the Ukrainian people will support me. They'll overthrow the Zelensky government. The more you actually take from Ukraine for your own benefit to prop up your economy, the more you lose the hearts and minds of the Ukrainian people who are affected.
Yeah. And, of course, the whole pretext of this fear of NATO getting so close to the Russian border is only being strengthened. We've got, of course, Finland and Sweden looking for membership now, and now the Danes looking at trying to forge a closer alliance with the EU. He's strengthening the very bodies that he had hoped to weaken.
Yeah, I mean, Vladimir Putin's gamble on February 24th is that the US and Europe would fight amongst themselves. The international community would not come to the aid of Ukraine, and the country would collapse fairly quickly. Gamble's backfired. Whatever happens with the next few months, the fact is that beyond Ukraine, you have brought Sweden and Finland on the verge of accession to NATO, that Denmark, which has had a 30-year opt-out from European Union defense and security policy, is likely in the referendum today to support going into that collective defense. And what you have is sort of a revitalization of collective defense, not to threaten Russia, which is Putin's excuse, but simply, as we have seen with the Baltic states and with Poland, to provide that umbrella of security if he decides to be even more expansionist.
Scott, always a pleasure to have your analysis. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bev.